Why do some people rise above the tides of history, while others are swallowed by them? It's a question as old as time. Tonight we travel back to the dawn of modern Europe to witness the birth of a man who would shape nations, crown himself an emperor, and leave behind a legacy so vast that even his enemies could not erase it. His name was Napoleon Bonaparte. But before the crown, before the battles, before the myth, there was only a boy. A boy from a small island with a hunger that burned brighter than the Mediterranean sun. Our story begins on Corsica, a rugged island floating between France and Italy, still echoing with the spirit of rebellion. It was the summer of 1769, and the Bonaparte family had just lost their homeland to French conquest. That same year, a child was born, Napoleon de Bonaparte. His father, Carlo, was a minor nobleman torn between Corsican pride and new French opportunities. His mother, Letizia, was strong, fiery, and unbending, the kind of woman who could endure both childbirth and war in the same week. From her, Napoleon would inherit not tenderness, but steel. The island taught him hardship early. He grew up poor among aristocrats, mocked for his accent, his small stature, and his fiery temper. But in that quiet fury, a powerful conviction took shape. Destiny was not something you were given. It was something you took. Napoleon would later write, "I was born when my country was dying. I was destined to avenge it." And so, he held on to that promise, carrying the soul of a rebel in the heart of a future king. At just 9 years old, Napoleon left Corsica for the first time. His father sent him to mainland France to study a decision that would change history. He was an outsider, a Corsican among Parisians, and though his uniform was the same, his soul was different. He devoured books, history, mathematics, strategy, philosophy. He read about Caesar, Hannibal, and Alexander the Great. He studied not just how they fought, but why they won. He discovered a truth most people never grasp, that empires are not built with swords, but with ideas, will, and timing. At the prestigious École Militaire in Paris, Napoleon's brilliance stood out, but so did his arrogance. He wrote essays arguing that France's glory could only be restored by strong, decisive leadership, words that would soon become prophecy. He was a soldier not yet of rank, but of vision. When his father died of illness, Napoleon, barely 15, became the head of the family. Poverty pressed upon them, but he swore he would lift their name so high that even kings would bow when they heard it. The boy from Corsica was forging himself into a weapon, waiting for the right moment to strike. By the time the French Revolution erupted in 1789, Napoleon was a young lieutenant stationed in the army. To most officers, the revolution was chaos. To Napoleon, it was opportunity. He understood something few others did, that in chaos, power seeks a master. France was tearing itself apart, kings falling, generals replaced, the guillotine busy every dawn. Yet amid this turmoil, a small artillery officer from Corsica began to shine. At Toulon in 1793, Napoleon seized his moment. The British had occupied the strategic port, and France desperately needed a miracle. Napoleon, just 24 years old, proposed a daring plan, one that no senior officer dared to attempt. With relentless energy, he reorganized the cannons, cut the enemy's supply line, and turned the battle decisively in France's favor. The victory was swift, brutal, and complete. For the first time, France cheered a name that would echo for generations, Bonaparte. He was promoted to general overnight. The world had just gotten its first taste of his genius. Success is intoxicating. For Napoleon, it was a revelation, proof that he was born not to serve, but to rule. His letters from this time reveal a man torn between duty and ambition. To his brother Joseph, he wrote, "A soldier must know no rest. Glory is my mistress, and her embraces are short but burning. But with power comes enemies." Within the revolution's shifting politics, jealousy and suspicion grew like weeds. Many hated him for his youth, others feared his intellect. But Napoleon played the game well, silence when needed, boldness when necessary. He learned that survival was not just about winning battles, but navigating the treacherous world of men. In Paris, he met Josephine de Beauharnais, a widow with charm, influence, and a scandalous beauty. She was older, but her social reach could open doors he couldn't break down with cannons alone. Their marriage would be one of passion and politics, the kind of union that builds empires and breaks hearts. With Josephine at his side, Napoleon was no longer just a soldier. He was a player in the grand game of power. In 1796, France faced chaos abroad. Its armies were starving, their morale shattered. The Directory, the ruling government in Paris, appointed Napoleon to command the army of Italy, almost as a last gamble. He was only 26. When he arrived, the veteran soldiers mocked him. Short, thin, and unknown. But by dawn the next day, his words had turned their laughter into fire. "Soldiers," he declared, "you are hungry and naked. The government owes you nothing, but the world shall pay for your courage. Follow me, and I will lead you to glory." What followed was like lightning. In a single year, Napoleon defeated the Austrians, liberated northern Italy, and forced kings to the negotiating table. Every battle was a symphony of movement, speed, deception, and precision. His genius wasn't just strategy, it was rhythm. He made war feel like an art form. The world took notice. Newspapers called him the little corporal who conquered Europe. But for Napoleon, this was only the beginning. He was just getting warmed up. As the victories piled up, so did the myth. Back in Paris, his fame grew, but so did the unease in the halls of power. The government feared he was becoming too popular, too powerful. And they were right. Napoleon had begun to see himself differently, not as a servant of France, but as the embodiment of its destiny. He once confided to a close aide, "Power is my religion. I am its prophet." That belief would one day crown him emperor, but for now, it made him dangerous. The revolution that had birthed him was devouring its own children. France was desperate for order, and order is a habit of wearing a uniform. And in the shadow of glory, Napoleon was already planning his next move, one that would change not just France, but the entire world. He had conquered Italy, silenced his critics, and captured the imagination of a continent. But in the heart of the young general, something restless stirred. Europe was not enough. His gaze turned south to Egypt, to the sands where Alexander the Great once marched. He sought not only victory, but immortality. And so, as the ships of France set sail into the golden horizon, the world held its breath. Would Napoleon rise as the new Alexander, or fall as just another name in the dust? The road to empire had begun. Thank you so much for joining us on this journey. If you enjoyed this story and want to find out what happens next, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe to RealTime Tales TV, and ring the notification bell. We'll see you next time. Hey RealTime Tales TV family, get ready to travel back in time, because today we're diving into a story so epic, so unbelievable, it sounds like fiction, but every word is true. We're talking about the man, the myth, the legend, Napoleon Bonaparte. From a nobody to the master of Europe, his life was a whirlwind of ambition, genius, a relentless chase after destiny. Imagine, it's 1798. The ships are sailing towards a blinding horizon, carrying not just soldiers, but dreams. Napoleon Bonaparte, a mere 28 years old, brilliant, and so far, undefeated, is chasing ghosts across the desert. His target, Egypt. He declared it was to strike at the heart of British power, to rewrite history where Alexander the Great once carved his name. But peel back that ambition, and you find something deeper, something almost haunting. He wasn't just at war with nations, he was at war with time itself. He wanted it to be remembered to prove that destiny could be forced by sheer will. When his fleet finally reached Alexandria, his soldiers were half-starved, their uniforms stiff with salt. Yet, as Napoleon stepped onto the burning sands, he looked across the dunes and whispered those immortal words from the heights of these pyramids. 40 centuries looked down upon us. Was it arrogance? Absolutely. Was it poetry? Without a doubt. Was it prophecy? You bet. In that single moment, he wasn't just a general. He was a legend, actively writing his own story. But let me tell you, Egypt was not kind to conquerors. The sun was merciless, the winds carried death, and the land itself, ancient, unyielding, resisted every single invader. Yet, Napoleon's army pressed forward, each step a testament to their endurance and, frankly, a touch of madness. At the Battle of the Pyramids, his strategy was pure genius in motion. While the Mamluk cavalry charged in their glittering armor, Napoleon formed his troops into vast squares, impregnable boxes of steel and fire. Cannons thundered, muskets flared. In less than an hour, the proud warriors of Egypt were shattered. As the smoke cleared, Napoleon gazed upon the fallen, his men chanting his name. But his eyes were already somewhere else, not on the battlefield, but beyond it. He wanted to conquer not just Egypt, but the very pages of history itself. Still, even legends can be humbled. Just weeks later, the French fleet was absolutely decimated by the British Under-Admiral Nelson at the Battle of the Nile. Napoleon and his men were stranded, trapped between the unforgiving desert and the vast, indifferent sea. And yet, he refused to spare. He turned isolation into empire. He reorganized Egypt, built schools, sent scholars to explore ancient ruins, met with local leaders, and immersed himself in ancient mysteries. In those lonely months under the alien stars, he began to believe he was chosen, not by kings, but by fate itself. Now, while Napoleon was busy chasing history across the sands back in France, things were falling apart. The French Revolution, which had promised so much, was eating itself alive. The Directory, the governing body, was corrupt, the economy was in tatters, and the people were desperate for order, for stability. Rumors of coups and assassinations filled the air like smoke. When Napoleon heard the news, he knew it in his bones. His time had come. In August of 1799, he made a daring, controversial move. He abandoned his army in Egypt and secretly sailed back to France. To some, it was an act of betrayal. To him, it was destiny calling. He arrived in Paris to find utter chaos, but chaos, as he always understood, was opportunity. Crowds cheered his return. Newspapers hailed him as the savior of France. The politicians, deluded, thought they could use him, control him. They were so wrong. November 9, 1799. History pivoted on this day. This was the coup of Brumaire. Napoleon, with a small, fiercely loyal circle of generals, entered the chambers of government under the guise of restoring stability. When the politicians resisted, he stormed the room, trembling with fury, his face pale, but his voice sharp as steel. "Do you want another revolution?" he shouted. "France needs order, and I am order." By nightfall, the old government was dissolved. By morning, a new one had risen, with Napoleon Bonaparte as first consul, the supreme ruler of France. Without firing a shot, he had conquered his own nation. He later famously remarked, "Never interrupt your enemy when he is making a mistake." The revolution had given France freedom. Napoleon gave it purpose. As ruler, Napoleon worked with relentless precision. He rewrote laws, crafting the Napoleonic Code, a legal framework that still influences modern nations today. He founded schools, reformed taxes, restored the church, and rebuilt armies. To a weary nation, he was both hero and tyrant, but above all, he was incredibly effective. He once said, "Ability is of little account without opportunity." Now that he had both, he wasted neither. But power is never truly satisfied. Each reform, each victory, only fed the fire within. He began to see Europe not as a collection of allies and enemies, but as pieces on a grand chessboard, and he, the undisputed master player. By 1804, Napoleon had achieved what no soldier had dared. He transformed a republic into an empire, and himself into an emperor. In a breathtaking ceremony at Notre Dame Cathedral, the Pope himself traveled to Paris to crown him. But, in a move that absolutely stunned the world, Napoleon took the imperial crown from the Pope's hands and placed it on his own head. It was more than symbolism, it was an audacious act of defiance, against kings, against traditional authority, against history itself. He had risen from a poor island boy to the ruler of Europe, creating his own destiny. Every insult, every hardship, every sacrifice, all forged into that single, blinding moment of triumph. Yet, even as the trumpet sounded, something in his eyes flickered, not pure joy, but the restless fire of ambition, still unfulfilled. Because for men like Napoleon, victory is never truly enough. The summit of one mountain only reveals another beyond it. From 1804 to 1812, Europe literally trembled beneath his shadow. He redrew borders, crowned kings, and crushed every coalition that dared to rise against him. His armies marched from Spain to the icy plains of Russia, his flags planted on every fortress. The world had never seen such speed, such strategic brilliance, or such staggering arrogance. But the higher he rose, the thinner the air became. Old enemies united, pride hardened into blindness. He began a fight not just for France, but for himself. And that, my friends, that would ultimately be his undoing. In the quiet hours of the night, as war maps stretched across his table, he sometimes stared into the candlelight and whispered, "I have become the prisoner of my own greatness. Every fire that burns too bright burns out too soon." By the time the snows of Russia awaited him, Napoleon was no longer the hungry Corsican boy who sought destiny. He was destiny, and destiny, once challenged, demands a price. The drums of war were beating again. The world was preparing for revenge, and the man who once conquered Europe was about to meet his greatest enemy, himself. This is just the beginning of an incredible saga. What happens next? How does a man who seemed unstoppable finally fall? You won't want to miss a single moment. If this journey through Napoleon's rise has captivated you, share this video with someone who loves a good story. And if you're hungry for more historical insights, hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. Together, let's keep the fire of history alive, right here on RealTime Tales TV, where the past speaks and legends never die. Next time, prepare for episode 2, The Fall of the Emperor, Betrayal, Exile, and the Final March of Napoleon Bonaparte. You don't want to miss it.